He's out of the limo, coming into the studio now. Get ready. All hands on deck. You guys ready?
Anytime.
Okay.
Anytime.
In 3, 2. Hello, and welcome to Swim Talk A2B. Everything you want to know about competitive swimming from A to B, and anything else that has the misfortune to cross our minds. I'm Dana Abbott, the A in A2B, and my partner in podcast mediocrity is Bob Button, the B, joining us from his backyard hammock in Bay City, Texas. How's it going down there, Bob?
Never better.
Coincidentally, that's just how listeners describe our podcast. We'll be right back.
The comments and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not reflect those of their employers, friends, families, or casual acquaintances. If you're not a member of the American Swimming Coaches Association, what are you waiting for? ASCA is all about education and support for us swim coaches. Their World Clinic features the top coaches in our sport. Become a member and sign up at swimmingcoach.org.
Welcome to Swim Talk. This week we have a good friend of ours as a guest, the former head coach of Ohio State University, and now the new Chief Executive Officer of the American Swimming Coaches Association, ASCA, is Coach Bill Wadley. Coach Wadley, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dana. It's a pleasure to be with you guys. And Bob, I'm excited to be a part of the program. And, the fun of anything new is, podcasts are a little new to me. I haven't done a bunch of them. But anytime you do something new, you learn something new and you grow a little bit. And life is all about doing new things. So thank you for inviting me. And I'm excited to be here and be a part of it.
We have been learning a lot of new things. This is new for us, and every time we do one, we come away with something new. It's great.
Yeah, one of the first things we learned was to be sure to hit the record button when you're talking to somebody.
Yeah, let's double check that before we go any further.
Okay.
That's a good start.
Yeah, okay, it is recording. Okay, and like Mike Litzinger told us last week, progress is good.
Right.
Bob, why don't you go ahead and get it started?
I'm gonna get the negative out there right off the bat, Coach. Every day we see athletes featured, usually on Twitter, verbally committing to schools, and I personally can't help but wonder if those schools are committed to the kids. Do you think athletic departments are doing all they can to follow through on their end? I mean, that's a big negative to start with, and it's just being honest. We got problems out here with kids committing to programs that may not be around.
Well, Bob, you've asked a challenging but important question, of course, and I think there's no real easy answer to that other than to say that I think COVID has given people both an easy out to use because their athletic departments are being challenged financially. But I think in reality, they were being challenged before, and but times were better. And because when times are good, it's like you were taught when you were younger to live below your means. And I think that in some cases, a lot of these universities are not living and haven't been living below their means so that they can prepare for a rainy day moment like COVID. And as a result of that, well, here we are. We have great schools like the University of Iowa and Michigan State University and William and Mary and others who are dropping men's and women's swimming in some cases. And there are others that were mentioned as well in all of this. And the shame of this is that if there had been some planning, with these, large athletic department budgets and certainly the Power 5 schools, but many of the schools, things have been good for quite some time. And if you're planning for those rainy day moments when times are good, then when you hit these moments like COVID, you can survive a year or two or whatever it happens to be. However, I think the keeping up with the Joneses issue in collegiate sports and has really created an issue for the Olympic sports and the non-revenue sports, because we're sort of put in a position now where the head football coach, the head basketball coach, and then of course a like number of women's sport coaches have to be paid a large fee now to be the head coach of those universities because of the competitive nature of the salary structure around America. And so as one university raises their what they're going to pay their coach, at Alabama, for example, and then another one raises it because it's like, well, we're number 2 in America, so we need to compete with the top 5 schools financially. And so before you know it, these athletic departments are spending, they've got 6 or 8 or 10 people on their salary that are making $1 million or more a year. And of course, the head coaches are making quite a bit more than that. And so every time you do that, yes, exactly. And every time you do that, you put all of these other student athletes at risk.
Right.
There's going to be those sports that are bringing in the money, of course, but these other young athletes provide a lifetime of support to the universities, a lifetime of membership to their booster and alumni clubs, a lifetime of gifting to those academic programs at College of Engineering and College of Business. They all go to their they typically will go back and support their universities for a couple games or sporting events a year. And so there's so many dollars, besides the fact that their own children might attend that university. So I really think that we've, unfortunately, the cat's out of the bag on that. But I really think that, had people thought in advance that, that this was, and seen a little bit further down the road, leaders see farther and see clearer. I think if they'd seen further down the road, we wouldn't be in quite the spot that we're in now. But it is very unfortunate for the athletes.
You hit on a term that has bothered me for decades, and that term is revenue sports.
No kidding.
Outside of a handful of big-time schools with big-time sports, there's really no such thing. Otherwise, they wouldn't need a budget for their revenue sports, would they? How have the ADs gotten away with this for so long? How is it that a revenue sports needs a budget many times larger than a non-revenue counterpart? It's hard for me to understand how they get away with this.
And one of the things to add on to there is it's not just football with their, 70 or 80 players. You got basketball teams that have huge budgets that have a lot more money allocated to them than, for example, a swim team that might be twice the size of the basketball team.
Our student athletes, the average student athlete at a major university, well, first off, of course, the Division II and III athletes out there that are doing just the same work as the Division I athletes are not on scholarships in many cases, but they might be on academic money or financial aid based on need through the university or through the FAFSA. But the universities that do have scholarships, the larger Division I schools that support their programs at a high level or have in the past, those kids are on an average of about 20 to 30% of a scholarship per athlete. So if you've got 70 athletes paying, 70% of the cost of attendance at that school, you're actually bringing in hundreds of thousands of dollars each year in tuition dollars. And that never gets talked about. Unfortunately, I think that everyone thinks that the easy thing to do is to drop sports and you'll be in a better spot. But in reality, when those kids leave that school, they've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in room and board and books and tuition money that they would typically have had by giving them a 30 or 25% scholarship.
Right. When you and Eddie might have had a men's roster of 30 or 40 guys and you're sharing 8.9 rides. Well, the rest of them are footing the bill. That's
right. It's 9.9. And I would say that our best athletes were still only on a 30% scholarship, and now obviously there were some that just couldn't do that and still maintain position on the team because they needed more financial help. And so you would do that with those kids. But in reality, in order to become, and I always tell parents this, in order to become a great team, that means that we have to find a way to offer you less. And that's too bad, but that's the way our team and your team, your child's team gets better. And so it's really sort of become a sad state of affairs as it is right now. But I think the answer is that, number one, there might be some shifting of some teams. I know that the University of Iowa was talking about potentially maybe shifting the team into the Department of Recreation. So there's there's a possible answer. And then funding the budget, the travel budget, and the coaching salaries through the Department of Recreation. So if they become, a part of the Department of Recreation as coaches, they might have to have reduction in salaries as opposed to the general athletic department. But at the same time, they still have a program. If they don't have scholarships, they still have an opportunity. They still have a program. And of course, they have a big, new, beautiful facility at the university there. And so really, there's no reason that this couldn't be a short-term solution to a longer-term problem.
Well, Bill, if
So
they
when-
go, if I'm sorry,
Oh, go
Bob,
ahead.
for stepping on you, but you did it to
No,
me last week.
I do it all the time.
Bill, if they were somehow absorbed into the recreation program, are they still NCAA eligible?
So there are schools that have already done that. So the University of Denver, for example, is one school that's an example that they actually are in the Department of Recreation currently.
Okay. And yet, a school like Cincinnati, when they said, "Hey, we're gonna continue with our program, but we're gonna drop a lot of our funding," maybe they can start shifting it to recreation. I kind of that's very interesting. I didn't know Denver was doing that.
Yeah, and we certainly aren't going to encourage that, but at the same time, if we go down the road and we end up having continuous dropping of programs, then we'll see how this works. But I think the model of how much money do you need to have to give an athlete a good, positive collegiate experience, and it's certainly we can work without having $2 million budget, right? And
so
so
it's a stopgap at least for now.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. Well, okay. We had been discussing endowing programs in order to save opportunities for these young kids that are coming up, so they can swim collegiately someday. We really didn't get into the dollar amount. What it really would entail. What sort of numbers are we talking about to set up a head coaching slot, an endowment, let's say at D1, 2, or a D3 program?
Well, of course, the a full endowed program is really quite expensive if you were to include scholarships and things. But if you just were to have the coaches, salaries, and you were to have reasonable salaries, and then you were to have a reasonable budget with a typical dual meet schedule that's within a 3 or 4 hour drive of the university. Certainly, you can do that in a manageable way without having to get much north of $150,000 to $200,000 a year, and even for a larger school. But a lot of these schools are within, like I say, 3 or 4 hour drive of 3 or 4 really, really good schools that they could compete with, and then they're within another shorter distance with a few schools that they can compete with that are just a little further away. And so my guess is that you could probably run the program on certainly $500,000, but my guess is you could do it for a lot less than that if you really had to.
Right. And in your part of the country, there are a lot of programs that would fit that mold where they are within those kind of distances.
That's right. Well, when I was at Ohio State, we could drive to Louisville, Kentucky, Indiana, Purdue, Notre Dame, Michigan, Eastern Michigan, Miami, Ohio, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Michigan State. We could drive to all of those schools and be under 4.5 hours.
Right. Okay. So this is sounding more doable, and maybe the athletic directors, well, I mean, are they open to this sort of thing? A lot of times when they drop a program, we hear them digging their heels in and saying, "Nope, done deal. Don't want to hear anything more from the alumni. Don't want to hear anything about your attempts to revive the program." And it's pretty disgusting.
I think
I think what's happened, Bob, is Dana, is that as I sort of shared in the beginning, I think my guess is that this is something that has already been thought about, but this is an easy opportunity to sort of use this moment to say, well, we have a problem in our department, and as a result, we can't do anything right now that is really going to continue these sports. And so what they do is this is an easy moment, to sort of say, let's slide away from 3 or 4 sports that we think that we're going to get the least amount of trouble from or grief from. What I don't think they realize is that the swimming community is really strongly united. And a lot of these athletic departments, swimming programs haven't really united yet, but we're in a process right now. I'm working with Greg Earhart from the College Swimming Coaches Association, and we've got a committee of 4 coaches, and we're doing a program. It's really sort of a endowment education program and a fundraising program for the college swimming coaches in America. And we do it once a month, and we've got 140 or so schools, I think, that are signed up for it. And we do an online Zoom, and what we do is we sort of go on and we talk about ideas and suggestions on how they can pull their alumni list together, how they can communicate on a regular basis and get their alumni more involved. And eventually, of course, if you involve your alumni, then you have a better shot at being able to sort of, get some support, and be able to show the athletic department that, you've got a lot of people out there who are willing to, to help the university. We had at Ohio State, in the time frame that I was there, we endowed 19 scholarships. Of course, we only had 9.9, but we endowed 19 scholarships, which meant that we had, doubled the amount of scholarships endowed that we currently were able to use. And then, of course, we raised money for the new pool. And so I think in my time there, we raised somewhere in the neighborhood of $20-ish million or a little bit more for the men's swimming program with our alumni and friends. And so, but that took a lot of time and a lot of work, and it was a daily task. And it has to be, the things that you do are determined by your daily agenda. It has to be a part of your daily agenda. And it was a part of my daily agenda. I would call a couple alumni on my way to lunch each day. If I went to lunch, or if I was, if I was going for a walk or something, I'd call a couple. Even if you don't catch them, you say hello to them, leave them a message, and you develop those connections and relationships that become, long term. You invite them back. You send them a T-shirt when they ask you for a T-shirt, and you build that esprit de corps among your alumni, just as if they were currently a team member. And before you know it, they've got your back in tough times, right? And they're able to help you out. So I think every university is going to be able to do that on their own if they work hard at it. But right now we're working on, and we actually have a Zoom call tomorrow morning to talk about this next month, which is coming up on Tuesday of the next week.
Billy, you stepped down at Ohio State in 2017, and you've just taken the reins of the American Swimming Coaches Association. Can you take some time and fill us in on what some of your ideas are about going forward with the ASCA? Any changes, any growth plans? What's going on there?
Well, first off, I'd have to say that this is, my very first job that I got as a coach was at the ASCA clinic. And I was with Coach Gamble, the University of Alabama, in grad school. And Coach Gamble, I went to Coach Gamble. My son, Brian, was going to be born. And when he was born, he had a couple heart issues, and he was going to have open heart surgery. And of course, I was a graduate assistant, and we didn't have insurance as graduate assistants. And so I went to Coach Gamble and said, Coach, I need to get a job. And I need to get one that has insurance. And so anyway, he said, well, you got to come with me to this thing called the American Swimming Coaches Convention. And I think it was in New Orleans that year. And I slept on his floor, as I remember that. And, but every morning we'd go down to the job board. And he said, Bill, I think these YMCAs have really good insurance, and most of them don't have pre-existing condition clauses, and maybe those would be good. And so, ended up looking at a YMCA in Rock Island, Illinois. I am from Rockford, Illinois. So I went ahead and interviewed and applied and got a job. And they had a great insurance program, and it had no pre-existing condition. And my son had open heart surgery at the University of Iowa. And it was just, it was a blessing in every way. The doctors at Iowa were great. The experience at Rock Island, I went into town, and I was a young coach just getting started. and I went to all of the the high schools in town and said, hey guys, how can I help support your high school swimming programs? If you send me your kids that aren't typically swimming right now in the summer, I'll make sure they stay in shape and get better and come back to you. I will never encourage them to just stay with me during the winter. We'll make sure that high school swimming is important. And as a result, we grew from 40 kids to 140 just by creating a friendship among all the coaches. And before you know it, one thing led to another. My son was doing great. went to the Joliet Jets. Team got second at my nationals, broke 9 national records. Then I'm at the University of Iowa as an assistant coach, and I'm the first Big Ten full-time assistant in the Big Ten. And so really it was I was very fortunate. My path, it seemed like every time that a challenge was there, there was another positive door that opened, and I was able to do something with it.
Now you've gone full circle, and you're back at ASCA.
And the good news is that I'm loyal to ASCA because of the fact that that this is something that really sort of helped me as a young coach. And so I really want to help those young coaches out there, young and old, with time tested and ideas. But at the same time, my focus is on sort of 3 things. We serve coaches and their coaches' education and personal growth and development, and the athletes that they serve. And the better we can serve the coaches, who help them get to the edge of their coaching so that they can become the very best possible coach for their athletes, then the better their athletes are going to be. And then I think we serve the coaches by finding new tools. So maybe there's a really new cool tool from a sponsor that we really feel like is going to be good. And before you know it, we're sharing that information with our coaches, who end up being able to use that to help their athletes get better. So the real focus on my side of things, Dana and Bob, is to make sure that I really keep my eyes on the target. The target is coach education, online programming, and building opportunities for coaches to get better and have personal growth.
Right. I got a chance to watch the videos for the virtual World Clinic, and I'm glad I did it, and I got a lot out of it. I'm still a believer in World Clinic. Virtual was great.
Well, you know what I'm planning on doing right now. You guys will get a kick out of this. We feel like the virtual clinic went well for a first virtual clinic, right? And at good attendance, almost 700 people. But there are a lot of people who cannot make the World Clinic because they're high school teachers or Y coaches, and if they're from rural places that can't afford to send them for a week of $150 a night or more for rooms. And right. Maybe they're the only coach and they can't afford to, they don't have an assistant coach to take over the kids, right? And so, I still believe that this virtual clinic, we've learned so many things during COVID that, and I think that's what, you always say, what did you take from this experience? It was such a difficult, terrible experience for so many families. Well, I think we learned about Zoom. We learned about how to communicate via podcast better. And, and we learned how to do virtual clinics. And virtual clinics are going to be around forever now. And I think we're going to do one in late January. That's going to be for YMCA and high school and club coaches that will be preparing for the championship season. And we're going to put it together. Dana and Bob, we're going to put it together here in the next month. And I've already been thinking about speakers and topics are going to be preparing for the championship season. Who doesn't want to listen to that one, right? Every
sign me up. I want to watch. Yes,
exactly. Every coach wants to talk about taper or retaper. When do you unload the legs? How much kicking should you do? How hard should you do it? When do you drop the weight training, dry line? There's so many good, cool topics, right?
Right.
I think you really hit upon the silver lining for having to have the virtual clinic this year. I know Bob and I are both in Texas, as you know, and our state high school coaches association went virtual this year. And I know that I think NISCA, the National Interscholastic Swimming Coaches Association, is leaning that way also, because as you point out, it does cost a lot, $150 a night in a room, meals, travel. And then the other problem with high school, as opposed to college, is that you don't have the same swim season across the country. So while it might be a good time of year for somebody, say from Texas, to go to NCAA's and the NISCA conference in March, somebody else in another state like California that is in full swing of their season, they can't get away. So a virtual really gives you a lot of flexibility and allows people to attend that wouldn't otherwise have a chance.
We'll build
the great thing is it's available for 30 days afterwards, right?
So that's right.
They don't have to do it in real time. They can, even though we'll set it in real time, they can do it in their own personal time when they get a moment.
Right.
That's how I had to do it. I mean, I've only been able to actually physically attend a couple of world clinics. Well, and this allowed me to be able to watch these, like you said, over the course of 30 days when I could fit it into my school day on a weekend, what have you. It was great.
No doubt. I've heard that from so many people, Bob. So anyway, I'm
Yeah.
excited about that. I think virtual clinics are here to stay, and of course we're hopeful that we can get back into our in-person clinic, which this year is in a pretty cool place. It's at Disney. It's in Orlando, and so it's a family type event, and that's one of the things that I really want to do is try to keep selecting locations that are family friendly, and that coaches, who want to take a little fall weekend with the family, can do that and enjoy some togetherness away from work,
Oh yeah. When I can go in person, I definitely will. When I can't, this virtual is an awesome option.
Bill, you mentioned to me last week that you were looking at reinvigorating a portion of the ASCA newsletter where you were going to be focusing on the different facets of coaching, YMCA, high school, college, club, so on. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, so I've been a coach at each of those. So so the cool thing about me, I think, is that I get a perspective of a small YMCA from my Rock Island experience, and a little bigger YMCA from my Joliet Jets experience. And then I went to Des Moines after I retired at Ohio State. I went to Des Moines and took on a challenge. They had 6 YMCA's in their city, and we combined all 6 YMCA's and made one 800 member team and had 55 coaches, and it was quite a fun task. So I went from a small Y to a really large Y that's very similar to one of the largest clubs in America. And of course, I'm now managing a swim club as well in Dublin, Ohio. And so that's a couple hundred athletes. And so one of the things that I think is really important is that, I use John Maxwell's law of significance, which it says that the number 1 is too small of a number to do anything of significance. And I use that to sort of guide my life. And what I mean by that is that one person alone can't do anything of significance. And so I can sit in that chair, at the ASCA executive director's chair, and I can call as many people as I can call a day, but I'm still only going to be able to reach so many. But if I have an army of supporters and a room full of people who really, really value coaches' education, coaches' personal growth, and serving the athletes through the coaches, then I think that we can really create some energy around, doing something special for all of our levels of swimming. And high school swimming has got unbelievable. I swam high school. If it weren't for my high school coach today, I have to tell you guys, I wouldn't be coaching. My high school coach was the difference maker in my life because he made swimming fun, and he gave me the love of this sport. And I'm still doing it from the time I started. I didn't start until I was 9th grade, but I've been doing it since then, since you were a 13-year-old boy, and so I sort of feel blessed that I have had the right people. And then, of course, I've worked at universities, Alabama, Iowa, Michigan State, Ohio State. So I've got the university experience, and then the YMCA's and the clubs. And so I sort of feel like, because I have a broad range of swimming experience, that's really what we want to do. We want to serve our high school coaches equally, as well as our YMCA coaches, equally as well as our club coaches, equally as well our collegiate coaches, and even our masters coaches. So we sort of believe that each month, what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to, in our newsletter, we're going to try to create a little energy around our newsletter, so that when our newsletter goes out, it'll have 4 of those 5 groups will have a newsletter. We'll have an article, about a 1-page article about a club or a coach that's doing something special in their area. And they're going to tell their story. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing in Des Moines, Iowa, what you're doing in Lubbock, Texas, what you're doing in Southern California. And so we want to hear from them. We want to hear their ideas and their suggestions, and we want to create some energy around what they're doing. And then, of course, we'll go on the next month and we'll get someone else to do it. But the idea is to create a group of 4 or 5 coaches in each of those that can sort of help us find the new coaches and help us provide some newsletter growth that will be fun educational articles from each level. And then also we want to have what I would call an ASCA's Army. I think we want to do some some opportunity for our coaches to really have some personal growth in terms of networking and mentoring. And so whenever a new coach joins ASCA, we're going to assign them a mentor in their area. So if someone from Kansas joins ASCA and it's a first-time coach, we're going to reach out to some coaches in their area, and we're going to assign them a mentor. And the mentor the goal will be to have the mentor invite them to their practice, to call them and welcome them to our coaching community, so that we can keep them engaged for the long haul, and then also to introduce them to people on the deck when they see them on the deck and they're back at meets again. And so our objective is to support coaches and encourage coaches and lift everybody up. And the old adage, rising tide lifts all boats. And so I really feel like we're on the right track. I want to do ASCA. I want to have you remember the old days when there was a Speedo rep out there and they were all over? Every time you turned around, you had a new Speedo rep or a tier rep or whatever it was.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we want to have an ASCA area rep. And the ASCA area rep is going to be, basically someone sort of representing ASCA in that area. We might start off with, 6 or 8 area reps and then go to, 10 to 16 area reps. But eventually I'd like to have area reps so that we can host ASCA educational clinics in those areas, and those area reps will help us find the location, help us produce the clinic, help us provide the educational components to that clinic and as speakers, and find the right speakers from their area. But at the same time, we want to have everyone in America understand what ASCA is. It's their service organization, and it provides an opportunity for them to be involved in everything from personal growth and networking to resume building, to online education, to personal education in person, to obviously developing a network of people that are going to be lifelong friends and supporters. I'm looking forward to it. I think there's more to do than time to do it, right?
Boy, hey, when you mentioned your high school coach, give us a name. I want to throw my high school coach's name out. I want Dana to too.
My high school coach's name is Dennis Carlson, and he is an amazing man. And he was the tennis coach in my high school, but he was assigned, because he was a math teacher, he was assigned swimming and tennis. And he, in the beginning, didn't know a lot about swimming, but being such a smart person, he became one of the best high school swimming coaches in our town over time. But yeah, Dennis Carlson was a special man.
Great. Well, mine was Henry Savage. Same thing. Started as a 9th grader. I'd never swum competitively. We're out in the middle of Rushville, New York. The high school is literally in the middle of a cornfield. But that's where we got our start. Brand new pool, brand new coach. He had swum D3 and he put up with me for 4 years. And that's where I got my love of swimming, Henry Savage. How about you, Dana?
I had a different coach each year in high school. Like you, I didn't start till my first year of high school, which in Miami was in 10th grade, Miami, Florida. My high school coaches, 2 of the 3 have passed away. Got one left down in Florida still, Pat Toner. He's running a swim school. I'm trying to remember where. It's on the East Coast, up above Fort Lauderdale. But my club coach for 3 years while I was in high school was Al Sheeler. For Sheeler Winton Swim Club. That was a club that produced Matt Gribble, 84 Olympian, and Ed Ryder, distance swimmer out at Southern Cal. And also had another club coach when I was in college down there, Cullen Bullock. He's still alive. We still communicate on Facebook. And I think, like when we're talking with Mike Litzinger last week, how do you get into coaching? Well, it happened while we were planning to do something else. And, the 3 of us, I'm sure, very similar in that regard. And here we are years and years and years later, and we look back at the guys that got us started. And I think we all feel a great debt of gratitude for getting us in this sport and keeping us in this sport.
They made a difference for all of us, and ASCA is loaded with coaches that are going to make a difference for countless people, right?
That's it. That's it. We want to help support, encourage, lift people up, and make them feel special, and help educate them and can help them continue their personal growth and development. Right.
Right. Hey, Big Ten swimming. The health of it I thought was so good. What's the state of Big Ten swimming now? You've been involved in Big Ten swimming for so long. Where do you see the future right now? The future going ahead.
So yeah, the shame of all of this is, typically they'll when they cut a program, they don't typically cut the programs at the top. If you notice that.
Illinois men.
So Kenyon is still on. They're doing fine. Denison is still doing fine, right? Michigan and Ohio State are still doing fine. And so I sort of feel like it's a really sort of a sad state of affairs that they're looking for things that they're not doing well in, that they're spending money on, that could be easily moved outside of the department. And that
could help out that third string punter.
Exactly. And in and of itself, it's not significant. It really just, it's just going to hurt the university in the long run, as I said earlier. But I think the state of, remember now there are 14 schools in the Big Ten on the women's side, right? And now there might be 13, but, I've heard that there's a really good chance because of Title IX that Michigan State may be able to get the ladies back. And of course, if Iowa were able to slide it over to the Department of Recreation, though, that would be wonderful. But you know how it happens exactly. Once they cut something, sure. They cut Nebraska men, they cut Illinois men. Once they cut them, it's hard for them to get them back. UCLA men, and these are really, really amazing programs that had great histories and
historic,
but,
right?
Usually when they cut somebody, they don't take them from the top.
No.
Texas is pretty safe.
Because that author duo has helped them out, right?
Coach Reese and I are dear friends, and bless his soul, he's about as sharing of a person as there is out there, and I count him among my very special, unique people that I love to connect with on a regular basis.
Yeah, he put up with me for a few years.
The best-selling new book, Eddie Reese, Coaching Swimming, Teaching Life, is available at Amazon.com and also at eddiereesebook.com.
Yeah, Eddie recruited Bobby in spite of his dad.
It was even with all the warnings that we sent him.
Yeah. So yeah, we love Eddie. He's great.
That's right. He's first class, no doubt.
Yeah, I think I've always told my swimmers that Eddie steals all of my stuff. And
all of your good stuff.
Yeah, steals all my great ideas. And I think Bobby, in one of his early meetings, his goal meetings with Eddie, closed one of the meetings by saying, "Oh yeah, and my dad said to stop stealing all his stuff." and so I texted Eddie. It sounds like my son was kind of a smart ass today in a meeting. And Eddie just texted me back, said, "Better than being a dumb one." I didn't know how to take that.
Hey, something we've talked about before with other coaches, Bob and I have noticed this too, that in the NCAA D1 women's ranks, there are almost no D1 top 20 teams that are women-only programs. Most have a male counterpart. At their university. Why does dropping a men's team affect the women's program so severely?
Well, I mean, let's face it, the kids grow up in, whether it be in a YMCA or, whether it be in a club, they grow up in there in they're in a coeducational environment, and so they're used to having, the other genders with them in training and sometimes, certainly in a club setting, that's where a lot of their social experiences come from. And so I think it has mostly to do with the social experience and the life experience, because let's face it, if it's just only about going up and down the pool, that's not enough. No. There has to be more to this experience than just going up and down that pool, right?
Absolutely.
Hey, I got to throw one at you. I mentioned it in an email. Claire, Bobby, and I went to Mansfield, spent a few great years up there. And he was one of the kids that I loved coaching when I filled in for the senior group. Enthusiastic, always looking for a challenge. And I wanted to ask you about your program at OSU. How do you keep a distance kid excited when they're grinding out that mileage? What do you do to keep it fresh for a kid like him? Because he just he seemed to love it.
Ian Betts is a special character, just in a human way too. He finished law school and got his law degree, and he was a leader with a cause. His cause was to lift up the daily experience of those around him. And he wasn't the guy who felt like he had to have all the attention. He wasn't the guy who felt like he needed to have the extra support. He was a guy who just came and had fun with the sport, worked hard, and enjoyed it. And the best part about a distance swimmer is that they typically are those kids on your team who don't complain about what they're doing, and they enjoy going up and down the pool a little bit more, and they typically will take whatever you give them because they like variety, and they don't want to just do one thing all the time. And so I think he came in, and one year was devoted to more freestyle, and the next year might have been devoted to a little bit more IM and stroke, then some freestyle. And so I think that distance swimmers have to improve skill wise just as much as a sprinter does, and they have to improve on their turns just as much. And if you think about the discipline required in distance swimming, so holding your stroke count together, making sure that you get in and out of those turns smoothly and efficiently and consistently the same way over time, with 66 lengths and in a 500 and so on and so forth. And so I sort of feel like that distance swimmers, the intelligent distance swimmers really, really thrive on that consistency and the devoted effort to do things well each day. And so he certainly would embody that.
I got a question for a big college coach like yourself. How about some tips for high school sophomores and juniors who are entering the college recruiting period in their high school years? What should they be doing to maximize their chances of being seen and considered by college coaches?
Well, there's no more difficult time for an athlete to be noticed than right now during COVID, because there's been so few meets for these kids between last February and now. And so the opportunity for them to sort of show themselves a little bit has really been reduced to a large degree. And obviously the coaches are looking for several things. The number one thing they're looking for good human qualities, because no one wants to have to replace an athlete with another good athlete, because that's a wasteful time frame. You spend a year and a half recruiting, or some cases a little more, recruiting someone, and you bring them into your home, and you've spent all this time on them, so you really want to make sure that when you bring them in, you're bringing in high character individuals who are passionate about the group, the team, the experience, the being the best that they can be. And so, I think that's it in a nutshell. If an athlete really wants to, show coaches what they're made of, then, become the best leader they can possibly be among their high school and club teams, work on leadership experiences and opportunities in their community, do volunteer work, get great grades. High school boys and girls, make sure you're focused on great grades, because it'll pay dividends down the road. It'll get you in the schools you want, and it'll keep you in the schools you want. And then I think that, if you reach out to the coaches early that you're interested in and have a realistic list, I always say pick a list of, 3 to 7 or so schools, and have a realistic list. Talk to your coach. And then you need to get on it pretty quickly, because what we find today is the collegiate recruiting process is happening faster and faster. And so then the life of a young athlete, they might be at the end of their sophomore year trying to make a decision now. And that's a lot earlier than it has been over the years. And so now these kids are making decisions earlier and earlier. And as a result, and of course, on the boys' side and girls too, but certainly on the boys' side, some of those kids are late bloomers. So they've got to make sure that they got to show and talk to, have their coaches, and they've got to show that they've got progress down the road. What kind of steady progress have you made? What are you doing technically to improve? And, and are you a coachable, teachable young person? And so I think coaches are looking for these kinds of young people. So athletes, do a good job of, getting some video of yourself, do a good job of, being the best, most coachable athlete that you can for your coaches on the team. Be a leader. Certainly focus on great grades. Take your honors courses as needed, and pick a realistic group of schools. So a realistic group of schools means finding schools that you can fit into, that you're convinced that you'll be able to compete one day on their team. I don't like it when an athlete goes to the top of the team out of high school. It's probably not a good spot for them. They're probably going to be less motivated over time. And I don't like it when an athlete goes to a team and joins and they're at the very bottom, because when you're at the bottom each year, Coach Reese and Coach Wadley and Coach Dorncott and all the coaches out there, they're going to recruit another really good group of kids. And so if you're on the bottom now, guess what's going to happen next year?
Be the bottom of the bottom.
You're going to be on the bottom of the bottom. And these athletes that are coming in are so good, and they're so they possess all of those traits that we just talked about, and amazing talents as well, right?
If you're backing it up and they're starting this recruiting process when they're younger and younger, they're also less mature, and they might be getting themselves in a little trouble social media wise.
That's right. And that's why I think it's important that they sit down with their coaches, make a plan early, and look at some realistic options that really make sense for them, because not everybody's going to go to Texas or Cal Berkeley or Stanford. Not everybody's going to go there. And it doesn't make sense, and they don't want them, and they can't take care of them all. And so I think that's the good news, is that there are so many other great opportunities outside of those top 3 or 4 schools that a young athlete can both have a great experience in, have personal growth and development in, get a great education that leads to a wonderful life job, and be on an excellent team that will allow them to swim for, all 4 years and have, wonderful experiences, and maybe swim for a championship in the process,
And they shouldn't overlook checking out the D2 and the D3s.
Right. How about those late bloomers that you and Eddie like to say that are going to make you famous?
Well, so let's face it, you're only as good as the people in front of you. And so, we like to say that we're pretty good at what we do. And I think that the top coaches are very good at what they do. But guess what? Go ask Ron Balator how difficult it was after he left UCLA and then he went to Brown. And there's just a great example. And, here's a great coach. You coach Robin Leamy, Tom Jager, you name it, just unbelievable athletes. And then he goes to Brown, where, he wasn't able to get quite as many of that level of athlete in the door. And as a result, people look at him like, well, I guess you're not quite as good a coach as you once were. No, the truth is he's still a great coach. But, the athletes make the coach, not the coach makes the athletes. And, and I think this is I heard this once, and I really believe this, the coach is there for the athletes, not the athletes are there for the coach.
Right.
Good point.
Hey, I wanted to shift a little bit real quick to facility. I think Dana mentioned something when we were talking to Michigan State. That was one of the excuses. Syracuse used that as an excuse. I think Clemson used that as an excuse. That's one of the things they like to use.
It's easy to say that, well, we're going to back out of this because we don't have $25 or $30 million to put into a new facility. So we'll just back out. And then we can't provide our kids with this level of experience that someone else can who has a great facility. And so it's just a real simple excuse to be able to sort of get out and get out with a reason that they think is a viable reason. In reality, we all know, and if you go and ask any athletic coach out there, they'll tell you that you need a gym, you need a pool. You don't have to have a 8-lane or 10-lane pool. You don't have to have the best gym. You just need a gym, and so, you need to have some weights, I remember when I was a kid and we didn't have a weight room to go to, but I remember we got a barbell and some weights, put them on the bar, and we dug holes in the backyard so that we could do bench press laying flat on our back in the yard.
Got stronger.
Right. And we did dips on chairs. Right. And so you guys remember that, but I think, it's just an excuse in and of itself. And the truth is that they can still compete at Michigan State in that pool.
And the media gives them a pass. The media doesn't push that. They accept it and they just move on to the next question. I'm sick of it. Just how about holding their feet to the fire and saying, no, that's not a good excuse.
The power that the universities wield to make a decision independent of others it always amazes me that they're able to do these in a vacuum, and I was told at the University of Iowa, and I'm not going to tell you all that I know, but I'll tell you one piece of it, that at the time that the kids were brought into a gym, all of the sports that were being cut, and the athletic director was there for a couple of minutes and said, "Hey, we're sorry to hear this, but we're going to cut your sports." They didn't give them any information about how to transfer, and they didn't give them any pamphlets. They didn't have a psychologist there, or someone there to sort of help. They pretty much did that and walked out of the room. And so the cold-hearted piece of that, when these athletes and these families give up everything, I can tell you this, that I had an athlete once come to me, and I felt so bad about it. I didn't want him to come. And he said, "Well, coach," he said, my father really wants me to come. I really want to come. I want to be coached by you. And my dad's going to sell the family car, so I can come and afford it.
Whoa.
That,
Wow.
These families give up so much to get their children to experience what they want them to experience. And, and I don't think sometimes that the administrators stop to realize what families go through to provide an opportunity for their kids to attend those universities, which are, great universities. And, but these decisions are not great decisions.
And they seem to be impacting our Olympic sports more than what I term the ball sports. We see wrestling, gymnastics, tennis, swimming, these fantastic Olympic sports, the ones that have the most tickets sold for their events every 4 years, and they don't give them any consideration.
The most medals, most tickets sold, and the most television time, right?
Yep. Right.
Most popular athletes.
We need them.
Yeah, it's crazy, but you're right. So So remember now, in the university setting, the Olympics are not really thought of like we think of them. Mm-hmm. In the university setting, they're not thinking of this experience as being a road to the Olympics through our wrestling or tennis or swimming program. They're thinking of this as being a opportunity to win maybe a championship or be a top 10 team maybe, but they're not thinking of like we think of it. This is
correct.
So if you think about without all the collegiate pools in America, without all the budget money that's put into collegiate swimming and gymnastics and wrestling, without all of that money, without all those facilities, without all those coaches, where's the Olympic movement in America? How good are we? And who will take up the slack and fill the, there's some pro groups out there now, but it's a totally different day now, and so I think we have our work cut out for us, but advocacy is critical, educating the coaches on how to, get their alumni in line and in order now, as opposed to waiting till the last minute. And, because once something comes down and it's already been decided, it's hard to get it back. But if you catch it early and you provide some suggestions and you provide some support and you do things of that nature, then certainly that is a better opportunity for the coaches and the programs to continue to maintain themselves. But it is a lot of, there's a lot of programs that over the last few years have been dropped, and unfortunately, many of them are not coming back.
Yeah. Well, we've been back and forth between the wet side and the dry side. I'm going to go back to the wet side here for a second. We've seen a lot of changes over the years. We've taught kids things that are now out, things we didn't teach and they're now in. We've been asking our guests if they can think of some absolutes that they've recognized over the years, some things that we've been doing and we need to keep on doing. Any thoughts on the absolutes in our sport?
Well, we need to keep on teaching. If our athletes, so I would say skill development is an advance of all personal development, and so the great coaches know this. And so when you're coaches out there that are listening, spend that extra time, take that extra time to teach skills well. and then to make sure that the athletes have a discipline skill during practice. So you got to take that skill and now you've got to put it under stress a little bit and do it over the course of time in practice so that they can have a stroke that's disciplined and habitual, and it's got to be efficient, and so the great ones make it look easy, and they always have, and they always will, right?
Right. Efficient speed, the best make it look easy. Well, what you got, Dana?
I wanted to give Bill a chance to give a plug for the program up in Ohio for the kids that are underserved in swimming. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, this is sort of a passion of mine. When I decided that I was going to retire, I started looking at what I was going to do, and I thought, well, you know what? I have not served the youth of America like I'd like to serve them, and so I decided I'd start a swim school. And so I went to great lengths to do some research on a swim school, started a swim school called Safe Splash. And summer of 2015, we started this swim school. And then in December, all fall, I kept feeling guilty that I started a swim school for those who could afford a swim school. But I didn't start a swim school for those kids who couldn't afford a swim school. It was a paid for swim school. You had to pay in order to take the lessons. And so I decided that I needed to start a nonprofit. And what I did is I started Swim for Life Ohio. So swimforlifeohio.com, and our focus is on providing free swim lessons to inner city children and those children who, in a partnership with the Head Start program in Columbus. And so they typically bus their children, 4, 5, and 6-year-olds, each week on Thursday. They bus them over to one of the pools that we rent, and we run a group of 2 groups in a row back to back of about 20-ish athletes children that are 4, 5, and 6 that in their very first swimming experience. Most of them, the first day they walk into a pool is when they walk into our pool, and it is a cool experience to watch their faces. And 6 weeks later, many of them are already swimming some strokes. It's really amazing what they can learn over 6 weeks. And so we would do that all year throughout the school year, and then in the spring we would sort of do a review before they went out to the summer pools and had a chance to sort of get them reviewed before they went to the summertime, So this year, unfortunately, we haven't been able, first year ever that we haven't been able to run it, but we typically would provide about 2,500 to 3,000 free swim lessons for inner city kids each
That
year.
is fantastic.
Tremendous example of giving back.
That is really neat.
We have in the book we mention, or that I mention in most of our podcasts, Eddie Reese, Coaching, Swimming, Teaching Life. One of the quotes that Eddie has in there is, all you've got going for you is what you can give. It's not what you can take. All you can leave is what you can give to others. And I think what you're doing with those kids is just marvelous. Thank you so much for doing that.
It's a blessing, no doubt about it. It's the best hour of my week every week, bar none.
That's terrific.
Bill, this has been fantastic. I am so excited now about ASCA and where you're going to take us. I appreciate you spending the time.
Absolutely. This has been a wonderful hour and whatever it is. Time flies when we're chatting with people that we enjoy talking with. And this has been quite an enjoyable interview. And I want to thank you for both of us for taking time out of what we know is a very busy schedule to chat with us and share your ideas and thoughts. And I'm sure it'll be a big help to an awful lot of people. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Bob. It's great to catch up with you guys, and looking forward to to our continued relationship, and call on me anytime.
Will do. Take care, Bill.
Yeah. Okay. Stay out of that hurricane.
All right. All right. Bye-bye.
All right.
See you later.
This episode has been generously sponsored by EddieReeseBook.com, the best source to purchase your own copy of the Amazon 5-star rated book about University of Texas coach Eddie Reese, and by NISCA, the National Interscholastic Swim Coaches Association, at www.niscaonline.org. Additional funding from the Podcasters Association of America and National Public Radio have not been applied for and most likely would not be granted even if we did apply. We're paying for this with money we were going to spend on desserts. Bon appetit!